Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge cycling podcast presented by Zwift, the online cycling platform. This is the Algarve and Andalucia recap, and we also have a note on Setmana, Valenciana-Volta, Comunitat, Valenciana, Fémines. What a mouthful race at the end of this podcast as well. But Algarve first, the maybe hardest mountaintop finish of Algarve, 182 Ks, finishing on Alta de Foia. There's a statue of Remco that Portuguese fans claim isn't actually Remco at the end of this climb, where he won. He beat Schachmann a couple of years ago. It's Picot to climb 10 Ks first at 5%, a short descent, and then 7.7 Ks at 6.1%. It's exposed. There's often a headwind. Ineos had the strongest team, Benji, but really, no one really had any idea who they were riding for.
Yep, that's true. At the start of today's stage, I honestly tuned in and we didn't have a breakaway anymore. Those were Pro Conti teams, as expected, but they were caught pretty early on. We'll talk about the Ineos squad in a bit on the climb itself. But we saw that at the front of the peloton, Fabio Jakobsen was paying back Remco because he was pacing in the yellow jersey at the front of the peloton, making sure that the tempo was relatively high. And unfortunately, a bit later, we saw a crash that happened then. It was quite a serious crash. I think the most notable candidates were Pidcock in there. We also had Izagiri, I think, down, and also Walter, Kokar, Bernard, Troja, and Lars van den Berg, last of which is reportedly DNF'd with a hip fracture. This is not completely confirmed, so let's hope it's not true, but it didn't look good. Shout out to Walter, who directly stayed with him until the medics were there. So that was nice to see. But hopefully the injuries there are not that bad. Pidcock was able to come back to that group, the peloton group. And I think he was the most important rider in that group that crashed for today's stage, to be honest. Perhaps Walter as well, as you could say. But after that, Quickstep kept it up for a bit when it comes to the pacing. But we quickly saw that Ineos was a team taking over, right? And like you say, who are they riding for? They've got Dani Martinez, they've got Pidcock, they've got Hayter here, who hasn't shown that great of a form except for that time trial in Bessèges. We've got the likes of Van Baarle here as well, Castroviejo, who is often very strong as a domestique, and then once a year can be very strong as a leader suddenly as well, like in the Dauphiné 2020 as well. So who knows? It might be possible, but in the end, it looked like the 7th position in the train was Pidcock, right?
Yeah, it was either for Pidcock or Hayter. There was headwind on the climb, so you do less work in the wheels on like a 5-6% climb. They got Tullet to domestique. Thomas said he was going to be riding as a domestique, and he rode on the second to last climb. He did a lot of work there on Picota. He reduced the group enough. Like, this was not a nuclear pace by any stretch of the imagination.
But hey, the attack game of Barguil together with Pro Conti riders. This is the second day in a row. Yesterday, after the Crossman section, Barguil went to the front and started pacing like a bit more than the peloton and rode away for a bit for like 2 minutes and then dropped back to the peloton. Today, he attacked away together with a Pro Conti rider on the second last climb, and 20 seconds later, he dropped back to the peloton. I don't know what Barguil is doing in this race. It's like Latour in the Tour de France last year.
So stupid, because perfect finish for him, the way they paced it so slowly, and he's costing himself energy there, and he should have been in G1 in this finish. But anyway,
what do you think?
He attacked. I don't know.
What do you think about Alpecin? Because at a certain point, they were pacing with their entire squad on the second last climb. Is that overkill for a rider like Javine?
I think he needs help with positioning, so that's why they're probably more conscious of it. Bringing him forward, but in the end, he wasn't right. He was sick in Antalya, and on a finish like this, he faded. So I'm trying to look through the results; they're not fully updated, but he certainly wasn't Group 1 for quite a while. So doesn't seem to be on top shape at the moment. But yeah, Ineos controlling headwind makes sense. I thought they'd be very, very happy to come to the line with a group of 15. And have Pidcock lead out Hayter or vice versa. I don't know which ones was going to be the leader. I thought maybe Pidcock, because Hayter was a bit off at Provence. Anyway, they get to the final climb. Evenepoel's got no teammates except for Vijker because they brought the sprint train. And and a Fapel rider attacked, Portuguese rider. Or was
Yeah.
it Dylan van Baarle attacking first, Benji?
They both attacked. Van Baarle was one of the attackers there as well, but that was odd because Ineos was like pacing for the first half of this Foya climb, and I was thinking perhaps they're going to try and keep it at a fake tempo to make it a sprint at the end with Pidcock or Hayter, like you mentioned. And then that Van Baarle attack kind of came out of nowhere for me because they just dropped the gap behind him, and he got a bit of a gap. And I guess I wasn't really expecting that to go anywhere. Vervaeke took over. That Ifapel attack wasn't to was later. I think it was a Glass Drive, by the way, or is that the name of Ifapel these days?
I don't know. It changes. Yes, Glass Drive, Q8, Anicola team, in the nuclear kits. I was so surprised Van Baarle attacked Benji. I thought they'd want to control, lead it out, and it got to the end of this climb, and Ineos ran out of numbers, and it got a bit messy. Pidcock's left on the front, and he's kind of done. Hayter's second wheel, and Battistella for Astana, who's good day for the Italians. The young ones, they're improving well. He attacks early, and I don't think that's possible if Van Baarle's fresh and they'd really delivered it properly for Hayter. It's my view. Anyway, he attacks around the left, sweeping left bend on Foya, group sprint of 12, 13 riders plus. So this is kind of what I thought Ineos would draw up. Evenepoel had been eating a lot of wind on the climb, and once we're into 100 meters, 150 meters to go with a group of 12, he's not winning the sprint. Pidcock follows Battistella. Eventually, Foss starts his sprint around this right-hand sweeping bend. Higuita goes around further, and they come together. Higuita in the Colombian national champs jersey, coming fast. We'll talk about the deviation or no deviation in a second. They both crash. They get tangled up. And David Gaudu, who is punchy, and he came third in Liège out of 5 in a sprint last year, he takes this stage, overcoming Battistella, the first, a big win for FDJ, who've had a pretty disappointing start to the year at Provence in particular, ahead of Battistella. Hayter third, he was the rider Ineos went for. Then McNulty, who was punching on Dauphiné, third. I thought he might even win this stage. Fourth, then Martinez, Evenepoel, Julien Bernard, George Zimmerman, Tony Gallopin, Sven-Erik Bistrom rounding up the top 10. Next group, Barguil and Pidcock actually says lost 17 seconds. But good win for Gaudu, a man not to be underestimated on these climbs. And look at Arate last year, although that's steeper. But before we get into the Foss and Higuita discussion, Benji, a mention of our show partner, Zwift. Getting set up to ride indoors can seem daunting, but it's easier than it looks at first. You just need your device, Windows or Mac desktop, laptop, tablet, or even your mobile. Get the Zwift app, get the Zwift companion app, wheel on or wheel off trainer, either or, and your bike, and you can dive into virtual riding, racing, cruising around, which Benji and I like to do after recording the podcast. That's what I'm going to do straight afterwards. So thanks to Zwift for supporting the podcast and for all of you joining on Tuesday on the group ride. Foss and Higuita, Benji. Who's to blame? Or is it 50% this, 50% that?
Okay, so how I see it is that there's a bend in the final corner during sprints that's very difficult to navigate already for sprinters. Yes, you can expect a sprinter to relatively sprint in a straight line on a straight road, but when a corner comes in, it's already kind of tricky when it comes to sprinters trying to figure out if they keep their lane in a corner and so forth. Now, in my eyes, Foss takes a bad line. Yes, he takes a bad line leading him into Higuita, but the sprint is in a corner, and honestly, you can't expect climbers to sprint perfectly parallel with the bend in my eyes. So for me, this is a pure race incident, this one.
I think this is 75% Higuita, and I was saying in messages yesterday that I think Higuita is a little bit a guy to avoid in the group. Now, I know Jungels crashed him out, but that was also in a situation where he was also being inattentive in a spot that other riders didn't expect him to be in. And in the pace line, I remember that he moved up. It was a bit weirdly there. He's crashed in other stages, which I don't know whose fault it was. But here, this is the really tough thing, Benji, because I was ready to go in on Foss because I saw the white strip in the middle of the road. And Vos has gone from the right side of it to that strip around the bend, leaving his lane. But then you look at the barriers and you look at the finish from the front on, from the final finish line camera, and the barriers are not parallel to that line. The line is actually deceptive and the finish is kind of at a different angle. And Vos actually was he was in the middle of the road, stayed in the middle of the road. Maybe he did edge out a bit to the left, but then he was going to the middle of where the finish was, sort of following the middle of the barriers. And so in that sense, I think Higuita's passed him too closely.
But is that, yeah, sure, he can take a wider corner, and it's perhaps a normal thing to take a wider corner, knowing that this stuff happens a lot these days in sprinting corners, but is it Higuita's fault then necessarily? Because if there's a white line on the road, I'm going to expect that that white line follows the road to the finish line.
Exactly.
Like, that's a logical thing in my eyes. So, I vaguely remember that.
I swear Cav went to the white line in the Tour de France last year in one of the stages, maybe the one where he nearly chopped Philipsen or Merlier. And it's the same problem. And so now, you're right, Benji, it's what you said at the start. It's just a racing incident. Like, if you were the UCI commissaire, what would you do?
Ban everyone except for Aramburu's not in this race, so I can't do it. Batistella, nah, come on. He's not Aramburu. Jose Neves. Portuguese pro Conti rider. Yeah, anyway, I think I agree with that aspect, but then we look at the other deviation or thing that happens, and that's a bit earlier. If we go back earlier in the sprint, we notice that Van Baarle moves across from the middle of the road to the left side of the road. Haters in his wheel moves as well, because his front wheel is in the left side of Van Baarle's back wheel. As a consequence, the same happens to McNulty, and that's the reason that Evenepoel gets squeezed on the left side of the road. Is that a race incident as well in your eyes?
Yeah, because I guess they're following Battistella ahead of them, and Evenepoel was in bad position for a lot of this climb, frankly, getting a lot of wind. And I think he's been so good, Benji, that he hasn't really been like, I need to conserve the maximum amount of energy here and sit in the draft. Whereas Asgreen in classics, like, he's learnt, because he's not been dominant until he was last year, I've got to conserve energy. But yeah, I don't know what you do there. No, Evenepoel was in bad position. Ineos following Battistella. They were front position. Vos let them. Don't have a problem with it.
I agree. Do you think that the reason that Remco Evenepoel doesn't move on a stage like this is because, first of all, there's a headwind. So if he attacks with 5k to go, he's not going to have that easy to keep that attack up to the line 1 against the peloton chasing. Then again, it's Remco Evenepoel, so he still might be able to do it. Nonetheless, do you think that it's because he knows, the time trial is coming, I can take time there, I don't need to take time on the likes of, who can I say that doesn't have a time trial in this bloody group? I would dare to say Martinez time trial is not at... Yeah, Gaudu, certainly, of course, 100%. Gaudu, Martinez's time trial is also not on the level of Remco Evenepoel. No. So is that his excuse, that he doesn't attack on a stage like this, you think?
He's got no climbing domestiques except for Vica to up the pace or even move him into good position. It's a strong headwind. It's a big group. Ineos are controlling the pace and sort of letting it get out of control right at the end. Headwind, people are marking him. Not much he can do, frankly, and maybe not on his best day either. But I think Higuita's cost himself a win here, and he was going to open up. He was looking very, very fast, but it is what it is. In terms of GC, David Gaudu, at least now, is 1 second of McNulty, Evenepoel, Hayter, Martinez, Bernard, and Bistrom. So GC, Benji, really looking like McNulty, Evenepoel, Hayter, which is a nice little battle. Tomorrow's stage 3. Is he good? Oh, no, he's TT. Come on.
I don't remember his time trial. Probably not good.
They're gods.
He was fourth in the prologue at Bessèges. Come on.
Absolutely no shot. 209 Ks tomorrow to Faro.
It's not happening.
You reckon Jakobsen gets over the 1500 meter 4.8% one, about 24 Ks to finish, Benji? He really should.
Yeah, I think he will. it's not an 8% climb or anything.
No.
It's a climb of gradient that he should be getting over, and he looks to be the kind of rider that can get over these versatile hills sometimes, and therefore I expect him to get over it, and perhaps a Medlier might get in trouble easier.
True. Anyway, should be a sprint. Maybe we'll see some flyers. Maybe Evenepoel will attack. I don't know. But today, for me, a little bit sleepy until the final climbs. Speaking of a sleepier stage until it kicked off right at the end, Vuelta a Andalucia, stage 2 into Alcala Real. The Peloton Benji, they woke up. They decided to pace the break today. Unbelievable stuff. But
Yeah.
were you surprised to see Bora pacing?
Honestly, I didn't see Bora pacing because I tuned in when Ineos was pacing already. So I'm gonna throw it back to you with I don't know when it comes to Bora. Who are they going for in this
I don't
parkour? I
know.
would argue that Bora was perhaps going for Kemna. I don't know. I wouldn't have paced if I was them on this
Bookman
parkour.
GC?
Well, not on this parkour. Like, not on today. It's not
I
like he
think
was
they
going to
were,
make a move
Benji.
here. I
They were
don't see
going
it.
for Bookman.
There's no point.
Well, I'd listen. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm telling you that. I think that's what they were doing because he's 15th or 17th on GC.
It's a mistake,
Anyway.
okay? Anyway, when it comes to the rest of the stage here, honestly, the breakaway wasn't really counting too much today, as you said, because the chase was happening. We saw our boy from yesterday, Rune Gergots, in the peloton in the yellow jersey. Let's hype him up a bit. Awesome rider. And after that, Ineos took over on the second to last climb, the longer climb before the finishing climb, and they just kept up that tempo, and nothing else happened. They went into the descent, they kept up that tempo, and we started basically on the final climb, right? Who was the first one to make a move on that one?
Bahrain had moved up late. Caruso moved up Poles and Haig, but Mikel Landa nowhere to be seen. Poles can be punchy on his day, and they gave him a chance. At the base of the Alcala Real climb, which has the last K at about 11.5%, he attacked, and it was Narvaez, who Ineos had been pacing for with Ben Turner quite well, who went to close it and really couldn't. Narvaez blew up very early. He kind of then closed Haig a little bit, and Benji's mad. Benji's going to be mad here. Covey attacks early again. Attacked yesterday early, and one from the group attacks. Haig doesn't really chase him back, not as big a GC threat. He tries to sit on Narvaez and pulls. They wait then for Gonzalo Serrano, pacing for Movistar side by side with Lopez. Serrano then, they're just behind Covey. They enter the cobbles. Serrano then zigzags across the road. We have some proper deviation action at 8 kilometers an hour, and Lopez gives him the biggest hip check I've ever seen. Lopez, but he was justified in it. He was getting close. Serrano then blocks Haig. That group stalls. Covey gets away further and wins this stage with Lopez second, Sosa third, Haig fourth. Small time gaps. The reason I ask or say that you're mad, Benji, is your Giro odds for stage wins for Cozy have been plummeting.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. I'm very sad about that. But I'm happy that Covey's winning. And it's also in a way where I was kind of expecting him to wait until the cobble ending and not necessarily go that early again like yesterday. I think going early yesterday was necessary because the break was still ahead. But apparently he just likes going early. And it's a second victory in a week for this guy. So he's definitely in form. It's insane. Now, I do want to turn it back to the Serrano versus Lopez deviation thing. Like you say, we had Serrano basically riding horizontally for a second there into Lopez, and Lopez body checks him. Now, the question there is, a lot of people have opposing opinions on this one. Honestly, my take is pretty clear. Serrano rides into Lopez, and Lopez puts his body there. Yes, a bit harshly, but like, what is he going to do? Stand still? Like, that's not going to happen on a climb like this. The last 200 meters of a stage, he's going to try and stay upright and keep pedaling. And as a consequence, yes, he shoulder checks him, but I don't see anything nefarious in that aspect by Lopez. And I think if Lopez crashes, Serrano's DQ'd here or relegated from that
100%.
Horizontal movement. 100%. Like, it's not on purpose, but intent doesn't matter. Like, for the rule, it doesn't matter here.
Serrano just completely ran out of gas at this point, and kind of like Bassett yesterday, maybe there's no ill intent, but when the road is 14% and cobbled and he's completely blown up, he's like, I got to go the shallowest way. And yeah, Lopez had been trying to pass him before the corner too, and Serrano was kind of blocking. Sosa benefited from it. He zoomed through. Haig was going to, I think, come second or third ahead of Sosa for sure. So I guess disappointing for him. But yeah, Movistar Lopez drama round one, perhaps. I'm trying to stoke the fires of that a little bit, but I think it was just, again, a racing incident. What about, I mean, with Benji, with this parcours, with the way Covey is looking, can he take out GC,
He wins GC.
here?
Of course.
I think he can.
It's him versus Lutsenko, I think. But where is Lutsenko today? Because I kind of feel like
exactly.
I didn't see him that much.
Well, here's the results.
Not at all.
Covey first, 2-second gap to Lopez, then another 2-second gap to Sosa, Haig, Steph Kras, Carlos Rodriguez, Dries Stevenans, Pozzovivo, just signed to Intermarché and he's here. Clark and Christian Rodriguez, poles 11th. And I'm looking. O'Connor lost time, Bookman lost time.
30th is where Lutsenko was ending, and that's on 34 seconds here. So that's quite a loss for GC, and with a gap of a lot from Covey now, it's going to be hard for him to take that back on the parcours we've got, because it's not like we've got grandiose parcours, you know? So I think Lutsenko might be out of the GC competition, and Intermarché with their Pozzovivo signing already in the top 10, he's doing quite all right there, right?
I mean, yeah, they just want him to get top 10s in stage races, and he is a professional at doing that, when others who are like, can't be bothered to ride for 8th. No. Pozzo will ride for that 8th. We'll move up to 7th. Okamika's in second on Burgos, Benji. He held well on the climb.
Yeah.
Maybe he can snag. Nah, he's not snagging top 10. I'd love to see it. Anyway.
It's possible. The guy got a top 10 at Sabatini last year, so the guy can get over hills.
Okay.
So possibly a top 10. You never know. It's cool to see a rider on Burgos in the top 10, to be honest.
Tomorrow's going to be a stern test. There's some longer climbs at the start of the stage, but it's a easier finish in the last 40, 153 Ks finishing in Altura. Girmay looks like he's a little bit... He won a flat sprint against quick guys, and he's not been as good uphill. Particularly today, I thought he'd be good, and he wasn't. He was where Lutsenko was, like 30 seconds back. Tomorrow, I think Intermarché will try for him, and with the flat finish, still rolly, I think he'll be quite difficult to beat. But anyway, there's another race. The Valenciana stage race has started, and Benji has a report from that.
Yes, sir. We've got a relatively flat stage with a hill in the end that might spice things up. And I tuned in when they were on that hill and just had an attack by 3 riders, including Annemiek van Vleuten, the big gun, obviously in the peloton here, Mavi Garcia as well in that group, and Marta Cavalli. So a rider of FDJ, one of Movistar and one of UAE. And then a few seconds later, we saw that 2 riders were catching up. This front group then had 30 seconds on the peloton, in which Trek was pacing for Balsamo. Fast rider, world champion, we know that. But what was odd was the 2 riders that joined the breakaway were Ludwig, Cicely Uttrup Ludwig, another FDJ rider, and Veronica Ewers, which is a rider we probably should have talked about a bit more on the EF podcast, because she's got quite some climbing talent and could honestly top 10 the TDFF if she keeps that up. She got second in Joe Martin's stage race, I think. Now, I expected Uttrup Ludwig to go to the front of that 5-women group and start pacing for Cavalli, because on paper, Cavalli is the faster rider in that group, in my eyes. But I didn't see it, but the footage dropped out, so it's possible that she did it off camera. So I want to throw it in there, just in case she actually paced and we didn't see it. Now, behind, Ellen van Dijk was hammering it in the second group, together with Elisa Longo-Borghini. Those 2 riders were working their ass off for Balsamo, their sprinter. Also, another sprinter in that group was Rosamund Gannon. She had Alexandra Manley as lead out in that group as well. So potentially, if that group comes back, it's a sprint between Rosamund Gannon and Balsamo. And we saw that gap was lowering, and that basically the front group got caught as a consequence of perhaps Ludwig not pacing for her teammate Cavalli. We don't know that for certain. But the lead out happened quite insanely, because Van Dijk, we know she's a fast woman when it comes to the time trial, but she can also hammer it into a lead out. And she did that the last 3 kilometers, 2 kilometers to go to 1 kilometer to go. And in the last kilometer, we saw that her teammate, Elisa Longoborghini, did the second last rider lead out. So she did the lead out, the proper lead out for Balsamo, basically. After getting dropped on the climb by Van Vleuten, still having the strength to do that. Balsamo in the wheel gets put off at 150 meters to go. Perfect lead out, and Rosamund Gannon can't get out of our wheel. Balsamo shouting victory in our first stage for the team. So wonderful there. And World Championships, guys, completely gone. So wonderful sprint there, and it was awesome to see. Hopefully we can see some more cool stuff in the next 3 stages of the stage race, which we'll also be covering on this podcast.
Balsamo looks, to get the win off her back straight away. And if people don't know, Ruby Rosamund Gannon is, she's a quick rider. She's been mainly competing in Australia the last few years. This is a Neo Pro year for Bike Exchange. Jayco certainly want to watch, and losing to Balsamo's no shame in that. Tomorrow's stage should be another sprint, a little bit more uphill, but as we saw in the World Champs, Balsamo has no problem with that. So unless there's a break forming on the early long climb, maybe there will be, because AVV's here, but then she's got the next stage after that. So I think it'll be a sprint or a break tomorrow once again.
If it's a sprint, do you think that Lorena Wiebes can get over the rather hilly terrain in the last half of the race?
She should, if she's in good condition. Like at Ronde van Drenthe, if she's in that form, I would expect her to be able to,
Yep, okay. Guess we'll see you tomorrow.
Balsamo v Wiebes. Hopefully we see it, 2 big guns, plus the young Rosamund Gannon again. But thanks for listening to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast. As always, we'll be back with the triple header recap tomorrow. Ciao.